Hello everyone, myself Tejas. Today I am going to explain about errors type 1 and type 2. Chapter 1, Standard Error. The standard deviation of sampling distribution is called the standard error. The reciprocal of standard error is called the precision. The sampling distribution of a mean is generated by repeated sampling from the sum population and recording of the sample means obtained. This forms a distribution of different means, and this distribution has its own mean and variance. Mathematically, the variance and the sampling mean distribution obtained is equal to the variance of population divided by the sample size. This is because of the sample size increases. Sample means cluster move closely around the population mean. Therefore, the relation between the standard error of the mean and standard deviation is such that for a given sample size, the standard error of the mean equals to the standard deviation divided by the square of the sample size. In other words, the standard error of the mean is measured after dispersion of the sample means around the population mean. In regression analysis, the term standard error refers either to be square root of the reduced squared. Chapter 2, Test of Hypothesis. In order to arrive at a decision regarding the population through a sample of the population, we have to make certain assumptions referred as hypotheses, which may or may not be true. Much depends on the framing of hypothesis. The hypothesis formulated for the purposes of its rejection under the assumption that is the true is called null hypothesis denoted by H0. Any hypothesis which is complementary to the null hypothesis called alternative hypothesis denoted by H1. Examples: to test whether a process B is better than a process A, as seen in a graph, we can formulate the hypothesis as there is no difference between the process A and B. To test whether there is a relation between two variants, we can formulate the hypothesis as there is no relation between them. Chapter 3, Errors, Type 1 and Type 2. In the context of testing the hypothesis, there are basically two types of errors. We can make type 1 and, as you know, type 2. In type 1, a type 1 error, also known as error of first kind, occurs when the null hypothesis H0 is true but it is rejected. Type 1 error may be compared with so-called false positive. Second one, a type 1 error occurs when we believe a falsehood. A rate of the type 1 error is make the size of the test and denoted by the Greek letter alpha. It is usually equals the significance level of test. If type 1 is error is fixed at 5%, it means that there is about 5 chance is in 100 that we will reject H0 when H0 is true. In type 2, type 2 errors is also known as an error of the second kind occurs when null hypothesis is false but erroneously fails to be rejected. Type 2 error means accepting the hypothesis which should has been rejected. A type 2 error can be compared with so-called false negative. A type 2 error is committed when we fail to believe a truth. A type 2 error occurs when one rejects the alternative hypothesis to reject the null hypothesis when the alternate hypothesis is true. The rate of the type 2 error is denoted by the Greek letter beta and related to the power of the test. The two errors can be represented as follows in tabular column. One is rejected null hypothesis and failed to rejected null hypothesis. Null hypothesis H0 is true. Another null hypothesis H0 is false. Now, a null hypothesis H0 is true when the rejected null hypothesis type 1 error is false positive and failed to reject null hypothesis correct outcomes true negatively. Null hypothesis H0 is false when rejected null hypothesis correct outcome true positive, failed to reject null hypothesis type 2 error false negative. Type 1 error and type 2 error differences. A type 1 error when a statistic calls for the rejection of null hypothesis which is factually true. A type 2 error is when a statistic does not give enough evidence to reject a null hypothesis even when the null hypothesis should factually be rejected. We may reject H0 when H0 is true is known as the type 1 error. In type 2 error, we can expect H0 when in fact H0 is not true is known as a type 2 error. A type 1 error is called a false positive, a type 2 error is called a false negative. It is denoted by the Greek letter alpha and is denoted by the Greek letter by beta, as seen in previous slides. Null hypothesis and type 1 error, alternative hypothesis and type 2 error. Reducing type 1 errors. Prescriptive testing is used in increasing the level of confidence, which in turn reduces type 1 errors. The chance of making type 1 error are reduced by increasing the level of confidence. Reducing type 2 errors. Descriptively testing is used to better describe the test conditions and appearance, which in turn reduces type 2 errors. This increases the number of times we rejected null hypothesis, with the resulting increase in the number of type 1 errors when it is really true and should be not be been rejected. Thank you.